Welcome to this session. We will be talking about authentication with return of experience from the field with recent experiences that we could have done in the past few months and years. I will start by presenting myself. I am David Martinache. I work for Wavestone, which is a French consulting firm that has a worldwide coverage. We are doing digital transformation for our clients with cybersecurity and identity expertise. And as my accent indicated, I am French. And as all French people, I do love my wine, my cheese, and my fresh baguettes. We also do love to make us hear. You may have seen in the recent news that we have done a lot of protests. What you don't know and what the media don't tell you is why we are really protesting. Today, so I say we will be talking about authentication, because authentication is solved, right? We have everything we need to answer all the issues on the field. If I count the number of sessions talking about authentication during this Identiverse, we can guess that that's not really the case. So we will see why we can still say that authentication is solved. That's not something I put there just for the pleasure to put it there. We will also see through the retour of the field why there is still some use cases that need to deep dive and engineer things with the tool we have today. And we will end up with a small recap of what we should do to solve this specific use case and what we should not do. So why authentication is solved? Because we have every ingredient to do the right recipe. We have great authentication factors. We can improve the security and the flow of passwords through strong second factors, such as OAuth and push notification. And yes, that's not perfect, neither in terms of security or user experiences, but that's already something. More importantly, we have FIDO2, and since 5 months, we do have pass keys. So we will be able to get rid of the password at last in a few months, years. It will take time, but we have the tool to do it. On the authorization server, with the dispersion of the password, we will solve the main issue, which is storing a secret. Really important and very critical. So we get rid of the password. We only have public information on the authentication part I'm talking. So we have solved this also. And in between, we have Wavestone, or FIDO2, that ensure phishing-resistant, privacy-preserving, and server and wire safe way of communication. So this part is tackled. Now, if you look at the application, here also we have a great tool to play with to solve the issue. We have SAML, OpenID Connect, OAuth, and every addition that you can throw in to address almost all, if not all, the application type that you can find on the field. I'm talking about web application, mobile application, SPA, IoT, desktop application. Everything can be addressed today through the RFC we have to play with. So yeah, we have all the ingredients. Why are we still working on authentication today? Because sometimes the planet and the star does not really align. And there is still some use cases that are here from a long time. I'm not speaking about the new ones, the modern needs for VC or things like that. I'm speaking of the way people work since a long time that are not directly addressed by what we have today. We will be speaking about shared workstation and shared accounts that we can find in factories, in hospitals, etc. You will have wandering users using several workstations within the same day, sometimes within the same hours. You will find also a situation where you don't have internet, where the user have their hand filled with things, or covered with gloves, or their face covered with mask. And you will also have the well-known legacy, edging software, edging hardware that you cannot get rid of, or if you touch them, you will lose the warranty attached to them. And last but not least, you will have also the complex user lifecycle. For example, simple use cases, we have a company, clients that are managing storage facilities. And sometimes they have big shipment arriving, and they have one day to classify and order all the goods of this shipment. And they will have workers coming only for the day to do that. And those workers need to access the IT system to get an application to tell them which goods to take where. I will go through some of the 3 examples where we will be tackle the 4 first use cases. We will be talking about manufacturing from a luxury company. We'll be talking about hospital and pharmacies that is related to the hospital world. For the factories, so it's a luxury brand, and when we arrive, what we have seen is that there is some shared workstation with generic session on it. Depending on the factory of the company, you will either find post-it with a password on it, or, clever enough, barcode containing the password, and you use a douchette to automatically fill the password into the field. And basically, what does it mean is that we have hygiene software, hygiene hardware, and very bad practices and lack of awareness, because this population was not used to use IT previously. So they have been forgotten into all the cybersecurity awareness that you could find on standard and modern company. Luckily enough, if the workstation session is shared, there is more and more web applications that require personal authentication to be accessed. So that's already something, but in a factory you can guess users have gloves, have things to move, so not really user-friendly. What has been designed is something very simple. Of course, FIDO2, with or without user verification, USB or contactless, and actually factories in France is one of the places where FIDO2 really starts to grow more than in any other place apart from IT administrator. Interesting. And what we have done, because we need those shared session on the workstation, is twice registered FIDO2 tokens. Meaning on those tokens you will find an identity shared for everyone that will enable to open the session, and a personal identity that will enable the user to access the web application. Easy one. Hospital, and here, stay with me because it will begin to become a little bit more messy. The situation is that you have wandering users that we will classify in 2 populations, and you will understand later why. Licensed health professionals, that will be doctors, nurses, and other professions that I will not translate in English, and non-licensed health professionals that you will have assistants, undergraduate, etc. Those wandering users will use shared workstations that you will find in the corridors to access a variety of applications, desktop clients, web clients for more modern one, and all that with various authentication factors. Here, once again, 2 types of factors in reality. The 3 first one will be password, FIDO2 key, smart card, etc. That is provided locally by the hospital with a local IDP. And the 2 last one, called CPS, Carte Professionnelle de Santé, which is basically a smart card and a mobile application to do push notification that are provided by the government with a central IDP called Pro Santé Connect. And all that is used on a day-to-day basis by the wandering users, leading to a situation where you have 30 authentication per day, which is a mess. We also find generic session, and this time the other way around, that's what we have seen in manufacturing, where basically the users open some kind of ESSO agent with this nominative account to unlock generic account that will be used to access application. And a use case a little bit more on the edge, which is remote desktop to workstation to access the workstation. And we have been asked by this client to find a solution to provide SSO between, between the desktop clients and the web clients, and if possible, the shared workstation, with a few constraints. And the main one was the desktop clients. Actually, some of these applications are more than 1 or 2 decades old, and you don't have the right to touch it. The editors don't want to do anything to change how they work today. So we have been working on a scenario a little bit complex and not very standard. Basically, when a user tries to access a web client, the web client will try to fetch a refresh token into a session secure storage of the workstation. As it is the first connection of the day, don't find it, so we will trigger a CIBA request with login hint to the central IDP called ProSanté Connect. CIBA client initiated back-channel authentication, because we don't want to mess with desktop clients that don't want to do authorization code. User is authenticated by the central IDP. It generates 2 tokens, a refresh token and an access token. The access token ends up into the application, the refresh token into the secure storage. The second time the user wants to use an application, for example, a desktop client, the client will go fetch the refresh token, find it, use it with a CIBA request with a login token hint toward the central IDP that interprets that then as an authentication, so does not ask anything else to the users, and provide a new access token with a renewed refresh token, so the application can access the resources. That's something very messy. It's complex, and that's the synthesis version of it. It's really complex. If you have all the exchanges that are going on, it's required to develop specific things, such as a web browser extension or a proxy for the clients to go fetch into the session secure storage the token. And we are pretty sure that in a few years, nobody will remember how it works and why it has been designed like that. And if it could answer all the business need, why not? But it's not even the case. You still don't have SSO with the workstation session, and we forgot half of our population. Only licensed health professionals have an account into the central IDP. So we have to build something else on top of that to cover all the users of the hospital. Luckily enough, we convinced our clients that this was too hard to implement and too risky to implement. So we get back to our more standard scenarios, where basically end users access clients that will be using the standard authorization code flow to get to the central IDP ProSanté Connect. And here what we have done is a second federation with the local IDP of the hospital, so that the user can authenticate with his local factors, have SSO with the local session, and you can enable any users of the hospital to access the application. What we have added is only 2 security. One, regular authentication using the governmental authentication for professional of health professional to ensure that they have still access to it and they are still licensed professional. And 2, we have defined a standard way to provide which factors have been used by the local IDP to the central IDP through ACR and IMR claim of the host standard. Less messy, easier to maintain, and not too much tweak around. Now we will be talking about pharmacies. And here the situation is deeply linked with what we have seen in hospital. You have shared workstation, once again, and people with busy hands because they have medication and prescription to manipulate while accessing their application. And here the interesting point is that in France, and I guess it's maybe the same in US, in pharmacies you will have one licensed professional and 2 or 3 undergraduates working with him. But the systems that need to be accessed as the application are all, most of them are linked to ProSanté Connect, so this famous IDP containing only licensed professional. So that means that you have 2/3 of your population that cannot authenticate to the application you need to use on a day-to-day basis. And what is interesting is that they have been using a specificity of the smart card provided by the government. This smart card deeply links its memory to the authentication factor of the card itself. You have two ways to authenticate using the card. The first one is 2FA, chip plus pin, and this will enable you to have a read and write access to the memory of the card, where you will be able to store a 4-hour session token. The second way to use the card is only contactless, 1FA, and here you only have read access to the memory of the card. And I think you can start to see where it's going up. Basically, on the morning, the licensed health professional will authenticate using 2FA, generate a 4-hour session on the card, and leave the card to be used by everyone else. So they can access the application they need to access, actually. Not great, it's even, we can even say terrible. The good news is that ProSanté Connect is working to enable to manage more identity, including the undergraduate, for example, or all the hospital population working on health situation. So it's a work in progress to solve this kind of issue. And yes, that's a centralized database that will not disappear anywhere soon. Where I want to go here is that if we are looking and zooming far enough in every context we will meet, it will be a specific use case. Every situation is its own snowflakes. And it's very tempting for us, engineer or professional of identity, to try to solve it, because that's in our nature to try to solve it. And the worst part is that we have a rich tool set to try to solve it. There is dozens of RFC of specifications that we can use to try to solve it by tweaking them a little bit, which is not always a good idea, because we will end up reinventing the wheel with error-prone design that nobody will successfully manage in a few years. So what we should do is to, yes, use the standard, the text that we have under the end, but find a balance between that, the comprehension of how the user really works. That's really important. We need to remember ourselves that we are making things for people to be able to work or to access an application. And to not forget how to educate, perform awareness to these people. I will end my presentation with a last return of experience, which is not mine, actually. It's one of my wife, which is a nurse working in a hospital. And her hospital has built a brand new building just recently. And they have moved in last week. In this new building, the hospital tried to solve the issue regarding the number of thefts they have on a regular basis. And to solve that, they have used the standard of physical access, every door with smart card to go through. And they have put those every doors everywhere, in every corridors. You can guess that after the first day they moved in, so last week, they were taking cupboard pieces. They have put that under each of the doors, and all the doors are now stay open everywhere. So great security, but not great for nurses or doctors that have patient to transport, medication to transport, and cannot open doors every 10 steps they took. I hope it makes sense. I hope I have bring something to you. And if you have any question, I think we have a little bit of time for it.
Yeah, so I saw you talking about healthcare using smart cards for authentication. That's something that is also very hot in the US with the PIF card and CAD card for federal agents. But now ubiquity there are FIPS. So are you seeing those type of tokens, which are not smart cards, but emulating smart cards, being used in the replacement of smart cards?
So the question is, the health sector use smart card today to authenticate, but things are evolving, and we have FIDO2 key, etc., that are coming that also provide the same functionality as smart card. So those we see those as an option in the future. For the health sector, my understanding is that that's not the way they will go. They are currently designing a new generation of smart card, and I know it's a generation of smart card. So it's under design, maybe it will evolve, but that's not where they are going on. For other sectors, yes, it's possible that they replace smart card with USB key, for example, the factory. I know it's something they want to do. And we also have the other way around. I have a company that initially used key to authenticate for day-to-day IT access, and they have replaced that with smart card that enable access to the building also.
Can you elaborate a little more on the hospital use case, on where it's at today with regards to the user experience when they have to access the workstation and a desktop application and a web application? It wasn't immediately clear if that was an SSO scenario or what was going on there.
So today, what happens is that you're wondering users, the nurses, for example, when she goes to a room, she will have a workstation outside the room. So she will have to authenticate to open the session. Then she will have to authenticate to the web portal where she will find the prescription. Then she will have to authenticate to the desktop client where she will enter the number of medications they have given to the patient. So that's already 3 authentication. Then she will go to another room with another workstation and do that all over again. So that's the current state that we are meeting here. And the target is to not do that.
Yeah, I guess that's really the question I'm asking is, has that problem been solved, or are you all still running into that challenge?
Yeah, it has been solved on the design. I know it needs to be heavily deployed. It will take time because basically those legacy desktop clients are not prone to change the way they work. Actually, that's the reason why the central IDP is today able to do authorization code, because it's standard, the best practice, but also CIBA, because those desktop clients does not want to lose the control about what they are doing, so they wanted to use CIBA. So this will take time, but that's where we are going. And since the deployment of the central IDP in 2019, there has been a massive acceleration of deployment due to COVID, actually, because all the French strategy around COVID, which is detection and vaccination, was heavily using modern application using standard protocols. So today, the Pro-Santé Connect is around 50 millions authentication per year, which is pretty high compared to the size of France. So yeah, that's where we are going. It will just take a lot of time.
And what's the mechanism? Like, are they still going in the next version? Are they still going to receive a challenge when they enter each of those systems? So, like when they go to the workstation or the web application inside the app, are they still getting a challenge and then there's a CIBA request, or is there no challenge?
Now, once they get to the workstation, if the application does not require a second factor, they will not be changed again.
Could you elaborate on the mechanism that's provided through? I guess I'm not connecting the dot with how the workstation authentication is used by like the web application.
I don't have all the details, honestly, but happy to talk with you just after to give you an answer. So if there is no more question, I guess I can free you. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available if you have any more questions or want to talk with me.